Hi, Mark here from the Tangibound Podcast Network and host of the flagship show, the Tangibound Podcast. Did you know that we over at Tangibound are always looking for amazing podcasts to promote? And did you also know that we are also proud nerds and geeks of everything from movies, music, gaming, TV shows, and comic books to wrestling, MMA, soccer, and football? Whatever you can nerd or geek out about, we've got it. And if you're interested, we can help you find it. And if you're a show looking for a place to call home, we've got you covered. Side effects may include upset stomach, dizziness, tumors, shakes, and in some rare cases, death from excessive laughter. Though to be fair, it's only sometimes. Other side effects may include diarrhea, gallstones, heart palpitations, and strong desire for cookies on the dark side. Talk to your doctor and visit TangiboundNetwork.com and see if Tangibound Network is right for you.
Sucks to the last drop. Are you gonna blow your head off? Take good aim and don't forget to duck. Life sucks every Monday and all the way to Sunday, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't care how you're doing, what's up or how's it hanging. I'd like to buy this world one last drink. Life sucks all of the time. Stick it up your sunshine, and then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day.
Welcome to the Crazy Life, everyone. My name's Jen, and I'm your hostess for the evening. And with me, as always, we have Brian and Henno. Hey, guys.
Hola.
Hey.
¿Cómo está? No. We won't go down that path.
Okay.
Anyways, how are you guys?
Muy bien.
You been? You
You
too?
too? Here, let's do community college Spanish class.
It's like, all right, I know most of what you just said. I watched Sesame Street. I watched Sesame Street. I learned some Spanish.
There you go.
I'm not exaggerating. Most of the Spanish I've learned came from Sesame Street.
Excellent.
Mine's about 20 years old, and it's not very fresh.
Yeah. I never took a foreign language, so I don't know much of any other language.
Nice.
Mm.
Oh, too fun.
Because as a potential art student, what foreign language could I possibly need? Like in the event that I decided to, go to Italy or France for, to be inspired by artists. I would, clearly I can just speak English and be completely, fit right in.
Duh, we're Americans. They should all speak our language.
Right.
Come on now.
You'd sign up for Cantonese or something. You know?
Yeah. That's what I should have
done. Not even a minute into the show and we're already train railed. Mm-hmm. Love it. Or derailed.
Derailed.
I can't even talk.
I like train railed.
Train railed.
Yeah, it's a cross between a train wreck and a derailment,
Pretty much. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Oh, fabulous. So who wants to go first? How's your week been?
Wow, we were all here last week, too. That's weird.
I know. Crickets.
Wow.
Come on, guys.
I'll go
Step
first.
up.
I'll go first because mine's pretty uneventful. I dealing more with the pain in my face, and it seems to be getting better. It's still got moments where it still hurts kind of bad, but overall it's not like a constant pain anymore, and I can actually chew, like if food gets over in that end, I'm not like, like I was last week, it's definitely, getting tougher. So that's good. Cause I really didn't want to have to go back into the dentist. I had therapy last week. which was good. I straightened out a couple things that kind of, I don't know how you want to word it. I kind of got off the path a little bit, and just, talking with her and stuff, she kind of, just, again, it's a lot of times it's just reminding you. It's like you have the tools, you know what to do. Trust yourself, trust that you will make the right decision going forward, that you're working on that. And, and it's so weird because that really is just what you need sometimes. It's just that little nudge back onto the road, and you're like, all right, I'm good, And, but I also set up an appointment in a couple weeks, with a nutritionalist. Because even though I know what to do realistically to lose weight, or be healthier via, from the food aspect, I can't seem to do it. So I need to find something that's going to work for me, and I figured this is, the way to start that is go to talk to somebody who knows what they're talking about and try to work through, that aspect of it. And it's cool, she's gonna, my therapist said they're gonna, basically send, my records to the nutritionalist so she can review it and see what I'm dealing with before I go over there. That way when I walk in, she already knows what's going on. I don't have to spend half the time, well, here's what I have in this, and, like you do every time you see a new doctor or something, So I'm kind of excited about that because I've wanted to make these changes for a long time, and I have made changes at different times, but it just never seems to have any long-term, effect. Like I'll just fluctuate, and it seems like I fluctuate, like I'll lose 15 pounds and then I'll gain 10, and I'll, it just seems in that range. I can't really seem to, to really get it going more than that. And I know it's probably, I have to make more extreme choices probably, but I, like I said, I want to have someone kind of give me options so maybe I can find something that works better for me, especially with having depression and not wanting to cook for myself all the time and, those kind of things. So we'll see how that goes.
A lot of it comes down to intake versus output.
Yeah, I know.
If you count the calories, it helps for a lot of people, or at least portion size and that type of thing. But like you said, it's a lot of it's stuff that we've known. It's just putting in practice.
Yeah, because it's like if it, I know I can do some of the stuff that I know people have done that are, pretty extreme changes and all that stuff. And it's like, if I do that, I'm sure it would be more effective. But the problem is, I know long-term wise that probably won't be as effective as I need it to be, I don't think a drastic change at one time is the way to go for me, but maybe it is. I don't know, and that's, it's like I was listening to Tim Ferriss's podcast one time, and he's got a book out called the 4-Hour Body, and basically it teaches you to I think in the first week or first 2 weeks or something like that, you just change your eating habits. Like you go on the diet that's in the book essentially. And then after a couple weeks, you introduce exercise. And the reason he did it that way is because he's like, if you try to change your food habits and try to introduce exercise, you're going to be super grumpy and resistant to both. Whereas if you're just doing one or the other, you can kind of, just get over it. And then, you're not throwing two big shifts into your life at one time, which can set some people up for failure, Like for me, it could seem overwhelming to me, So yeah, we'll see how that goes.
I think one of the things that's great is I think you're taking what you've learned from seeing a therapist and applying it to other aspects of your life. And that's even when you know everything, sometimes we just need someone to be accountable to and someone to inspire us. There is a difference. Like I could say, I don't need to see a personal trainer. I've got lots of exercises I can do. But there's something about having a coach, and that's what we're talking about. Therapists are coaches, just like nutritionists are coaches, to get us on track and to help us organize things in a fashion that inspires us to try it. personally, most of my aha moments in my life happen when I'm working with somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, I do occasionally have aha moments to myself. It happens.
But you're right. I'm the same way.
But it's like when I'm working with somebody else, that, you know, you have that interaction and that back and forth, and, you know, maybe they say something or just phrase something a certain way, and you go, oh wow, I needed that.
Yeah. And I've had enough of those in therapy
cool.
now that, like you said, I think it's made me more receptive to the idea of this, because otherwise I would have been like, I don't need a nutritionist. I can go online. I can, you know, but then, like you said, it's like in my head, I go, and I'm like, wow, this sounds really familiar. Now let's replace nutritionalist with therapist. And it's the same conversation. I don't need to go to therapy. I can look stuff up online. I can figure out ways to work around it and blah, blah. And it's funny. Yeah, you can, but, you know, like you said, sometimes just that being accountable, it's similar to, like, now a lot of professions, you really could learn how to do them online without, and I don't mean official courses, but there's so much stuff out there you could take and learn so much of what you need to know. Like an art school is a great example. I've seen artists post, like, don't go to art school, do these things instead. And those are great. Like Jen mentioned when her and I talked about this a long time ago, you know, those are great if you're self-motivated. If you're not, there's no one to hold you accountable. So, you know, there's no deadlines for your assignments. There's no grades. There's no, you know, so where do you know, you could just easily take 6 months to do something that in school would be a 2-week thing. And that, you know, that wouldn't be acceptable in the professional world, you know? So these things, and just like this other stuff, it's like, you know, sometimes that, you know, gentle nudge back on the road, or sometimes it's a firm foot in the butt, you know, you know, whatever you need, that's their job, is to kind of just, you know, do you need a hug or do you need a, you know, a smack across the face, basically?
That's
exactly.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool.
And I think that's about it for me. I can't think of anything else right now, so good enough.
How you doing, Hanno? How's your week been?
Pretty good. I had a serious butt-kicking week at work, but it was, it just felt accomplished. But boy, was I tired some days. I'm working in an indoor pool, and so it's hot and humid in there. And on Sunday, a week ago, I started to work in there, and I had my winter stuff on. You know, I got a beanie on and flannel-lined long pants. I'm like, what am I doing? You know, so I got done what I needed to get done, and I'm like, yeah, it'll be shorts the rest of this week. Just when everyone's like, why are you wearing shorts?
Yeah.
Look where I'm working.
Yeah. It's like, cause that's an inferno. That's why. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was really good. It was a challenge. I like when I have a challenging week and I rise to the challenge.
Yeah.
You know, and I feel good about it. Like, there was one night when I came home and there were some things I wanted to do, because that's the other thing I've been doing is all right, you know, not wasting time on video games. Let's do something here. You know, let's be productive.
Right.
And I had some things I wanted to do. Drank like a cup and a half of coffee. Fell asleep at 8:30.
Mission accomplished.
Gosh, like, seriously, I was like, okay, I just had there was at one point where, and Sharon had a headache that day, so I came home. She was asleep, so she finally kind of woke. She took a half a day off. I think it was like on Wednesday. She took a half day off, and she. By the time that she kind of got up, she was all woo, you know, second win, and I'm like,
yeah.
She's like, let's talk about this, and this. I'm like, let's not.
Yeah.
Oh, sleepy time.
Yeah. I'm all tuckered out.
So funny.
Yeah.
But it was a great week in that aspect of just like, okay, I'm, you know, getting stuff done, feeling good. And then I went skiing on Friday, and I had some things to do around town. I had a great day on the hill, and I go to my post office and I open up mail, and as soon as I opened up my box, I saw the, from the IRS. I'm like, uh-oh. Because I had completely spaced filing the taxes for our LLC for the band. Like, I don't even know. I mean, I just completely forgot.
Oh boy.
But yeah, it was wild. And by the time and that's because we just haven't been doing anything with it. And by the time I remembered, I was like, well, we literally had no transactions last year. So it's just zeros all along, right? Just goose eggs.
But you still have to document it. Yeah.
Right. And so and they still penalize you for it. And when I looked at the dollar amount, I was like, I first had like, heart sank, and which is followed up by just laughter, because it's like, we have no money. I wrote checks to everybody. We're closing this thing by the end of the year.
Right.
I'm just like, I was like, okay. And then it was like, okay, well, you do need to deal with this. But I tried calling, and it's like, no, you're not going to get through. And, but my win for the week was I didn't obsess on it. I had chances where I had lots of opportunities to, and I did do a little bit of research, just enough to make me go, okay, I can deal with this. This will be fine.
Yeah.
But I didn't obsess on it. I didn't need to fix it right away. And there were several times where I was like lying in bed where I'm like, nope, you don't even need to think about it right now. And I didn't. And I thought about, I'm going to go see my friend Joe in Atlanta on Wednesday and see my cousins. And I was like, I can think about that. That's a lot more fun to think about.
Right. And that's a big step right there, actually. Cause I'm sure like I mentioned it on here. It's been a few months ago that, my therapist had given me a sheet that talked about that when you get to, not a crossroads, but like your brain starts wanting you to pull to the left or whatever, and if you can recognize it, you can then put your tools into place to stop it or try to stop it, whatever, and try to get yourself, distracted a different way or to the path you want to be on instead. Yeah, that's very important.
Yeah, it was a real good, feeling of a victory. It's like, it's like, no, I already had plans this weekend. This doesn't have to happen today. So let's stick with, what the plan was.
Right.
And that's huge in my life to be able to do that and not get bogged down by, life happening. And a lot of it is also when my experience is because I can be hypercritical of myself, I then want to fix myself immediately. Because I'm good at beating myself up, I want to fix it.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I didn't beat myself up. So I didn't have anything I needed to fix, which was great.
Yeah.
I just put it into perspective, and it was actually it's going to kind of tie into the topic tonight. But and then I followed it up with getting some things done, like filing paperwork and clutter.
Yeah.
Things. Clutter that occupies a physical as much as your mental state.
Right.
And, I just put everything got filed. Like the whole year's worth of everything got filed, got taken down the basement, and whatever needs to be ready for taxes is ready for taxes, that kind of a thing.
Right.
And so yeah, pretty good week.
Good.
Sounds like it. Lots of production.
Yeah. How about you, Jen?
Well, not so productive.
That's okay too.
I had a lazy week. I was way lazier than I should have been. There's a lot of things that I could have been doing and should have been doing, but motivation was not the highlight of the week. I was not motivated to make changes and to get caught up on stuff. So hopefully this week I need to make that more of a priority to kind of motivate myself to get moving after work. Because I find myself, I come home from work and I have lunch because I get home from work around 2:30 in the afternoon. So I have lunch with my husband, then he goes off to work. Then I have the evening to myself. And so from pretty much like 4:30 on, I can do whatever I want to do. And it's becoming kind of very convenient and comfortable to just kind of channel surf, little binge watch,
Well, real quick,
early.
Go back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago about the, having someone to check into and be responsible to. Mm-hmm. It's that same thing. You're left to your own devices, and it's like, stretching out on the couch,
Pretty much.
If someone else is there, they're like, really? You're just going to lay around all night?
So I definitely, I need to get a little bit more active there in the evenings. But it was a good week. I ended up work update. So it looks like it hasn't been officially announced, but it looks pretty certain that I'm going to be learning dispatch. So they'll be adding blending my role with the dispatch roles. That should be interesting. So new challenges on that front. So hopefully it's not going to be too many more hours, because right now I'm still around the 45 mark, which is so much better than where I was,
right?
Thankfully. So that's making it a little bit more easier, making it easier for me to be able to relax in the evenings and stuff and not be as exhausted as I was, which is awesome.
Right.
Yeah, my brother came into town this weekend, so I got a chance to see him and put my Christmas tree up and get all my Christmassy stuff out. So I have my stockings hung, my tree is decorated, and for those of you who know me, know my obsession with cats, and so a good portion of my tree is cat affiliated, so which always makes me happy when I put up all my kitty cats on my tree. Good times. And then today I went to my niece's 2-year-old birthday party. So, which was fun. And it's always interesting to get a chance to see family and stuff. And family functions are kind of a double-edged sword for me. So I think I've mentioned before, I love my family and I love my husband's family. And it's great to see everybody. But for me, I'm very hypercritical of myself at social functions, especially when it comes to family functions. I'm just super, super hypercritical. So I really have to fight internally not to constantly berate myself for not saying the right thing, not doing the right thing, making the wrong motions, all of that stuff. So I really have to be cognizant of how I'm talking to myself, how I'm treating myself, and stopping any bad behaviors immediately and not letting them get out of control. So today I would give myself a solid 7. I did fairly well. I had a little trouble spots, but I did fairly well in keeping it all together and not getting too bent down on myself for stuff that nobody else cares about or notices whatsoever except for me. So. But yeah, so that's been my week. It's been pretty good.
Good.
Now, Hanno, you had an article for us?
Yes, I do.
Woohoo!
The question Dr. Jeffrey S. Nevid poses for us. I'm going to hand out the credentials first. He's a professor of psychology and director of clinical psychology at St. John's University. I think that's quite impressive.
I agree.
Yeah. And this is on Psychology Today, and it's called The Minute Therapist. Or I guess it could be the Minute Therapist, but I'm assuming it's the Minute Therapist. Right. And so he's got a blog, and the goal of his blog is to give us opportunities to challenge and correct distorted ways of thinking and self-defeating beliefs that often lead to negative emotions. And we know what those negative emotions are. And today's topic in his blog was about inner dialogue and the idea that some people might be embarrassed to admit that they talk to themselves under their breath. And are these types of beliefs holding you back from having the kind of inner dialogue that could lead to meaningful change? And so he throws out some questions. And the first question is, now, aren't you just saying think positively?
there's some of that I'm thinking there.
And we talk about that a lot here.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Right?
Yep.
But we also talk a lot about the fact that, this doesn't mean walking around all day like you got a, goofy grin on your face.
Right.
Correct.
Or, living off in the pink cloud, like we call it in recovery, where you're actually denying the existence of actual bad things that happen in the world.
Yeah.
Right. You do have to face the fact that not everything is going to be sunshine and rainbows and cookies and all that good jazz.
Yeah. And that it's reasonable to experience grief and profound feelings of sadness. The idea is to make sure that the emotions are proportional to the situations.
Right.
Is my reaction appropriate to the situation?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Am I being right-sized?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that distinctively goes into the distorted thinking list.
Oh, it definitely does. Yeah. Yeah. Because it really is a situation where you're checking, am I catastrophizing?
Yep.
Is this a big deal or is this, oh, you're fine? Like you'll be okay. You're not in any danger, kind of a situation.
Am I obsessing? That's a big one.
And denial or, not an example that the good doctor gives is like you get fired from work. It's ludicrous to pretend this was the best thing that could have possibly happened to you.
Right.
Correct.
Now, there is a possibility. Yeah, there is a possibility that it ends up being the best thing that's happened to you.
Right.
Right. But the last thing says, but jumping for joy when true disappointment occurs is a form of denial, not rational thinking.
Right.
Yeah.
So the second question is
really quick.
Aren't people who talk?
Hold on, quick. That is also distorted thinking. Distorted thinking doesn't always have to be negative. If you're doing this and you're, oh yeah, everything, it's like you're distorting. That is not rational. Mm-hmm. That is distortion of reality. So,
one of my coworkers is like that to a T. Everything's like, oh, okay, yeah, it's not that big of a deal. It's like, yeah, it is.
Right.
like you're coughing up blood.
Yeah, it's kind of a big deal.
Yeah. It could be more.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the next question is, aren't people who talk to themselves crazy?
Crazy? I was crazy once. They locked me in a room. I died there. Worms, they tickled my toes. They drove me crazy.
I like it throws out a great example of like when you stub your toe, you talk to yourself.
Yeah, generally.
It's true.
Yeah.
Right? Nobody, or you open that bill you open that thing from the IRS and you scream an obscenity.
Right. Not that anyone here would do that.
Who are you talking to? Yeah. Yourself.
Yeah.
But like a great question. Have you had any good conversations with yourself lately?
Yeah.
What thoughts go through your mind when you are alone with yourself? What do you say to yourself lying in bed at night, making no sounds? But it's the constant form of daily consciousness. People that do suffer from mental disorders such as schizophrenia, they have self-dialogues too. And you might observe them carrying on those conversations with the voices in their heads, but that's a little different it's a different form of self-speech.
Right.
So the difference is where the ownership of the inner speech is attributed to other persons or forces outside oneself.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a very, very important distinction to make, is that if your inner dialogue if your dialogue is with somebody that you perceive to be somebody else or somebody outside yourself, it might be time to seek some professional help.
Right.
Absolutely. But if the kind of dialogue is you talking to yourself and there's only one person involved in the conversation.
Yes, exactly. There you go.
Well, it's funny because, like, for years, the only way that I would say, or think that somebody was, like, crazy if they were talking to themselves is if they were actually having a conversation. Like, if you're just like, you dummy, or something like that, it's more of a, like, or like you said, you stub your toe, you yell something out, and then that's pretty much the end of it. The ones that I always think of are the people you'd see walking around somewhere, and I don't mean people, essentially what you would also wonder is, are they wearing a Bluetooth, device? Because, like, you just see them.
It's different now.
Yeah, and they just keep talking and talking and talking, and you're like, who are you talking to? And, I think cause that's it, cause aside from like those, moments of like an emotional outburst, generally we talk to ourselves, it's in our own head. We're not generally saying it out loud and, talking it through. So, not that is the, the like clinical difference or whatever, but that was the way I always looked at it, cause I didn't think much if I saw somebody just, say something to themselves. But like I said, if it looks like they're having a lengthy conversation with themselves, it's a little, then I was like,
serious dialogue.
Okay, whatever. No judgment, but just, all right. I mean, I've had long conversations with myself, but it's not out loud. They're always internal.
Yeah. And even under your breath, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Sometimes it just helps to hear things out loud.
Yeah.
It just does. Like, sometimes I just have way too much going on up in my head that I just need to hear something out loud. And when I hear it out loud, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. It changes it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the next question is, aren't you saying then that I'm responsible for my own misery because of the way I think about things?
Ha-ha!
And the doctor says no. And he says, having a knee-jerk reaction of blaming yourself whenever something goes wrong that affects you or someone else is one of the most common forms of distorted thinking.
Yeah, it is.
And that our internal dialogue is a part of our upbringing, our experiences with belief systems, significant figures in our lives like parents, relatives, friends, teachers, and that your thinking style is no different than hair color. And just like the color of your hair, you can change your thinking style.
Yep. Which is essentially what we've been...
Great response to that.
I agree, yeah. And that's what we've been talking about on the show for a long time, really. And, it's funny because when you first mentioned this to me, and I was kind of the thought process, like, I get what he's saying. But at the same time, you kind of are. But by changing your hair color, or your thought process, you're fighting against it. You're working against it so that you're not, you're trying to do all you can to not contribute to bad thinking, bad things happening to you, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that we've talked about earlier was that idea of challenging these thoughts, these distorted thinking, rituals is really what they are.
Yeah.
It's something that we've done for a long time. And until we challenge them, we can't change them.
Right.
And I think that's the goal here, is that we challenge a lot of these routines that we have.
Yeah.
And especially like something about like blaming yourself.
Yeah. Because it is really simple to do, and like you said, that could be a product of, the way you were raised. It could be something you've just manifested yourself. It could be any of that, but it's something you definitely don't want to keep doing, because a lot of times it really isn't your fault. You may have contributed to something that led to, your unhappiness or whatever, but, bad thing, like you were saying earlier, you get fired, sometimes, maybe you did something that directly led to it, but there are other times where it's just like, hey, we're eliminating your position, kind of a situation to where it's like, well, I didn't really do anything wrong. I'm just unfortunately in the wrong profession, and that's the worst thing you did. But to blame yourself, well, I wasn't good enough for them to keep me, they didn't move me to another department, or, and it's like, no, it's like that. Those are the situations where, you try not to beat yourself up because you didn't, it's not your fault at that point, Similar to like, the way they tell kids, or not, tell kids it's not their fault that parents broke up, or, somebody in an abusive relationship, it's not your fault that this happened, kind of a thing. And it's, you are mentally abusing yourself by constantly blaming yourself for everything, and a lot of people don't recognize that, but that is quite a bit of abuse to give yourself. It's a really heavy thing. When you quit doing that, it is a huge weight lifted off of you.
A good way to look at it is, what's the benefit? What am I benefiting from this self-talk?
Yeah, what's the motive in a way? Yeah.
Sometimes, like in the case of, getting fired, sometimes having good self-assessment and taking a look at your portion of the responsibility of what happened and why things happen, you can gain a lot of introspection, and a lot of benefit can be gained from just taking a look at things and how I can be better for next time around. Now, on the flip side, if your self-talk is in your internal monologue is not enlightening you to any new information, if it's just rehashing old information, if it's doing nothing but making you feel bad and you're not gaining anything positive from the self-talk, it's time to change the tone.
Right.
It's time to switch the music over to something a little bit more peppy.
Oddly enough, it's the exact same conversation we had, was it last week when you talked about giving up video games, Henno?
Yeah.
It really is.
Yep.
It's like, why am I doing this to myself? Why am I, why am I making myself angry? I'm not enjoying this. Why am I doing this? It's really the same talk.
And it leads to his next question, which is, but then who's at fault? My parents?
Yeah.
He says that in his profession, they've noted a common misconception of patients in psychotherapy, that the answer to their problems will only emerge when they find out who's at fault. Mm. And that fault finding covers over the true challenge of psychotherapy, which is to stop replaying tiresome old scripts with new people playing various familiar parts, a pattern that keeps you locked up as a prisoner of the past. And that we should be reappraising ourselves in a new light, putting aside who did what to whom in favor of what you can do in the present for yourself and others.
Yep.
I think that's a great way of putting it, is like, instead of beating yourself up, it's like, okay, well, what can you do? Solution.
It's Rafiki time. It's in the past. Yeah. But it is, and it's really the truth though. That is really like, that's a huge part of going to therapy, is so that you quit looking backward, Yeah. And don't look too far down the road either. You're really trying to react or take action now, like living in the moment, not constantly looking back and, I wasn't good enough. I'm not good enough. It just makes it to where, as I've said before, it's basically like you won't move forward. You'll just be so set on looking behind that you'll never move forward in life. You're just going to be, frozen there basically. And like Henno said, just looking for someone to blame things on doesn't help. I mean, and if cause I've been around people that'll be like, who did this? And it's, someone didn't do something right in the household, whoever house it is, like, well, who did this? And in my head, I'm kind of like, why does it matter? At this point, it's already been done. If you want to issue a statement of, hey, let's try not to blah, 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 fine. But what does it matter who did it at this point? And I know sometimes you need to know who did it, like with little kids, cause you gotta try to keep them on the right path or whatever. But at the same time, it's like, don't focus on who did it, just like he was saying in there, just focus on what you can do now that it's done, like, okay, you got fired. Don't keep looking back at that, instead go, you know what? I have an opportunity to, look for something new, look for something, now I have an opportunity to maybe look for something to make me happier. Like try to do those kind of things, instead. Even though, yeah, it sucks. It hurts. Your ego is going to be hurt because no one likes to be fired because it seems like a rejection, but at the same time, it's just be like, you know what? Now I'm going to turn this into something good kind of a deal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and also the converse of this is if it's always somebody else's fault, you might be a narcissist.
Very true. Yeah.
I mean, if it's always somebody else's fault, always.
Well, and that's the easy road too. That's the easy road
What's
too.
up?
I said that's the easy road too. Because if I blame everybody else, I'd never have to look at myself and work on myself. It's just like, I'm perfect.
Oh yeah, it is perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. At my work, I get to those points. Sometimes finding fault is the way to prevent something from happening again.
Right.
But then there are occasions where things just happen, and like you said, nothing's going to change. Finding some fault.
Yeah.
It's like it happened,
mm-hmm.
and several people may have been able to catch on to it earlier, but they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And it really doesn't matter. It doesn't, and I know people that want to dive into that, want to find somebody that should have done something different.
Mm-hmm. Or that they can tell what you should have done. That's a key to it too, is that's part of the process. Some people just have to tell, they have to, you should have done this, which by, again, would have, should have, all those kind of things are on the distorted thinking worksheet. So, that's no good either.
Yeah. And where it's like, well, you know what? It happened.
Mm-hmm.
And, let's look at what we can do so it doesn't happen again next time.
Yeah.
There's obviously no negligence here.
Right.
And I so prefer to go there because sometimes when it starts getting into like, oh, well, so-and-so was there 10 minutes before. Why didn't they notice this or something like that? And it's like, oh, Lord.
Yeah. Yeah. Come on.
And who's ultimately responsible for seeing it? Yeah. Is it the person that's, you can get so bogged down in the mud with everything and you just lose track of the big picture of what really happened, what was the result, and how to prevent it.
It'd be like a police officer showing up at the scene of an accident and not asking if everyone was okay, but just going, okay, who did what? Like whose fault is it? Whose fault? Yeah. And it's like, oh, I'm bleeding to death. Yeah, whose fault is it? It's like when you're not dealing with what needs to be dealt with, you're just so hung up on the other, and it's, I don't know. Like I said, there's plenty of examples of times when it is appropriate to try to find out who is at fault. If there's a crime that's been committed, or like Henno said, if there's negligence in something, sure, then, could someone have been hurt, or could there have been property damage to something? Things like that, sure, cause you want to be like, hey, make sure, but even then you don't necessarily, the only reason you want to find out is so you can like help that person not do that again, essentially, or at least, be like, hey, we can't do that, so I don't know. It's really easy to get hung up on that though. And it's really easy to lean on that, and just play the victim, even if you don't go to full narcissist on it, like it's so easy to just play the victim, and I know Henno's talked, I think you talked on here about it, about people you've known that are, it's everybody else's fault for their misery basically, and it's like, no, it's a lot of element, it's like, what have you done to change it? What have you done to make these things not be negative, There are plenty of things that happen to all of us that we easily could have reacted differently to. And I'm not saying like a what if scenario, but just we chose the negative path because that's what we expect. We're setting ourselves up for failure, for the negative. We're not setting ourselves up or putting ourselves out there for the risk of a positive. The safe bet is the negative because we expect it.
And I wonder how much of that is because of these interactions we've had either at work, in our personal relationships, growing up, where there was this blame goal to find fault rather than to find solutions and to move forward and to do things better, and how much of that becomes our inner dialogue. That we've had these environments that we've been in that have trained us in our own inner dialogue to use the same sort of tools. And I think that's definitely a style that we can definitely change.
Yeah.
And then once we change it within ourselves, we're probably likely to change it outside of ourselves, which I think is always a good thing. Because that's what it talks about. It's like, what can you do in the present for yourself and others?
Yeah. It can also help you diffuse.
Such a powerful, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
It can help
that's
you.
Exactly it. Yeah.
It can help you diffuse a situation too. Picture a workplace. Something happens. Someone's angry. Who did this? Who blah blah? And you just go in and you're kind of just work your way through. Hey, you know what? It doesn't matter who did this. Like, let's just fix the problem. This is broken. Let's just fix this and whatever, and along the way, if you figure out who did it, then okay, fine, but,
what goes hand in hand with this is the desire and need to be right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of that's the flip side of playing the blame game is, if someone else is at fault, then I'm right.
Yeah.
And not, and then, bumps up against the it's not fair aspect of things.
Right.
So, if I'm getting blamed for something that's not my fault, it's not fair. Even if I'm not getting blamed for something and someone is not taking the blame for something, that's not fair. They're getting away with something.
Right.
So, those aspects are sisters basically to this whole topic.
Yeah.
Yeah. It really is. And again, the need to be right all the time. This sort of thinking works. Yeah.
So the last question is my favorite. Aren't you just saying you should rationalize away your concerns? Because that's kind of like what we're talking about. Like, aren't we just, having an inner dialogue to scoot those concerns away? And the answer is, well, what's the difference between reasoning with yourself and rationalizing? Let's put it this way. Reasoning with yourself involves testing your perceptions against reality to form more objective appraisals of situations you face. On the other hand, rationalizing replaces rational thought with exaggerated, distorted thinking.
Yep. Kind of like I was just saying a minute ago, like when you look at you're like, well, I'm going to do this because this is what always happens to me, rather than going the opposite way and taking a risk, as that people who build walls around their heart, basically, versus someone who keeps putting themselves back out there. It's like, yeah, you're going to get hurt. It stinks. Negative things happen, but you keep going and you keep trying. And the other person is going to be like, well, I never get hurt. And you're like, yeah, but you never love either. Like you're giving up one for the other. And that's kind of what happens here is if you just constantly pick the negative, you can go, well, I never get disappointed or I never this. And you can go, yeah, but you're not really living. You're just avoiding everything. And at some point, like me, that's what I was doing and still do. But, at some point you kind of like, I'm tired of this,
Yep. Yeah, you have to come to terms with who you want to be and how you want your life to go. And it's tough to take that control back a bit. Because it's easy to just kind of sit back and let life happen and let your perceptions of things just go and, whatever your mind thinks is right is right. And you don't challenge, you don't question, you don't push. Just go with the flow.
Yeah.
It's easy.
Well,
you're opting out.
Yeah. You're also doing the process of what he's talking about here, which is rationalizing.
Yeah.
You're and I can apply this to myself. there was parts in my life when I was drinking where it's like, okay, you're a jerk, and that's just who you are, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yep.
Right.
That's not challenging my thinking.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's me just rationalizing what happens.
Yeah.
Well, I can't change who I am,
Mm-hmm.
or
Yep.
I can't make this any different. Well, it really wasn't that big of a deal after all. That's not testing the perception at all.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That's holding on to a fixed reality that is unalterable.
Right.
And it is exactly of where I was, because I didn't believe it could happen. And minimizing is just as bad as catastrophizing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
You're like, oh well, it's no big deal. Who cares anyway?
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe you should care a little.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing Karen touched on a little bit there is you can't dictate to someone else how they feel. If they feel it's a big deal and you don't, that's fine. But you can't dictate to them it's not a big deal if it is to them.
Yeah.
That you just hit one of my hugest pet peeves that recently, which is denying other people's feelings and experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
We can, I see it all the time, especially where politics is happening,
Yep.
where people just deny other people's experiences, and it's like, how dare you?
Yeah.
I really,
Yeah.
And now that doesn't mean I have to accept it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I can't deny it. If somebody really, like, there's an example of taking an exam. If literally somebody feels like this exam their entire life hinges on it, and the world is going to end if they don't pass, well, that's how they feel.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I can't change that.
Right. Right. And really in this scenario, what you want is them to be able to change themselves so that they don't look at it as this big of a deal. Like, look, it's a test. If I fail it, I can take it again, or I'll do something else. That's how you want people, ideally that's what this is trying to teach us to do. But like you said, if I'm talking with somebody and they're like, I'm taking my SATs tomorrow, and if I don't get this, I don't get into this school, which means I can't do this. And you're like, whoa, you're 10 years down the road, but you're right.
Exactly.
You can't stop them. I mean, you might say something because that's just our nature, but
of course,
especially like that,
Yeah.
like I'm trying to help, but they're not going to hear it really,
Well, you hope that you can say, well, is to once again bring things into the right size, the right perspective.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
To that even like in that example, that okay, no, you might not get into that school, but there's plenty of other schools.
Yeah.
So there's a way to look at this where you are not rationalizing. You basically, in a lot of those examples, you are rationalizing away your failure before you've even tried.
Yeah.
Or before you've even put in the work. It's like, well, why don't you just focus on the work right now and forget about any sort of consequences? And this, another example that's given here is this idea of personal invulnerability. Like, oh, well, and the example is like smoking. Oh, cancer doesn't run in my family, blah, 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 blah. It's like, it's not being in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
You're not even thinking, and that we can deal with all sorts of health issues like that.
Yeah.
We talk about it all the time.
That goes back to,
with
I
our
think
personal health here.
A lot of that is, rooted in ego, because it's really the, that won't happen to me mentality.
That is an interesting point.
And it's something you see all the time with people. Like somebody will be like, well, I'd tell them this. And you're like, there's no point, because they're going to, like trying to tell, a 16-year-old something a lot of times. We've all been that age and gone, like, you don't know what you're talking about, and they're literally going, I did the exact same thing as you. It turns out badly, and you're like, meh, it's not going to happen to me, and then it does.
I'm different.
Yeah. And like you said, with smoking, drinking, all that stuff. Like someone will drink
all that stuff,
and go to drive home. I won't get in an accident, like, I'm sure a lot of people have been wrong about that. but you see it all the time. We've all done it to where we don't even realize we're doing it, because it seems like a mile away. Like, I'll have unprotected sex one time. Like, I'm not going to get AIDS, or HIV, and it's like, yeah, odds are you won't, but why run the risk up at all?
Right.
So
in recovery, there's the term we like to use is terminally unique, which is it's kind of funny because it's the whole adding terminally there.
Yeah.
But that, like, I'm somehow special.
Yeah.
And it's not even about being special. It's being like, so, special to the point where it's terminal. I just love that idea. Like you're absolutely not even looking at the real world in any way, shape, or form. Right. You are so unique that I exist outside of the world around me.
Yeah, rules don't apply to me.
It's such a great point, Brian.
That's why I said it's such an ego thing. Huh?
Yeah. Conforming nonconformists?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep, them too.
Well, God, that's really it.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's when people go off on conspiracy theories, that's how I think. Oh, well, you're special. You see things different from everybody. Yeah. Like this, it's that saying, to me, that's, once again, that's just rationalizing and not reasoning.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And there's also a difference between, because as I've mentioned before on here, feelings are noun. It's a thing. I feel a certain way. How you behave and how you act and how you choose to move forward from that is that's the action part of it.
Yeah.
I feel sad. Sad is the noun. It is not, anything more than just a thing. It's why I feel sad, how I'm going to change things, what am I going to do to not feel sad, all of that stuff, that's the action. That's the stuff we can change. That's the stuff we can work on. Mm. You still may feel sad, but you hopefully won't feel as sad if you take actions to benefit for that.
Right. And by the way, he's totally wrong because he said that, no test is essentially, life or death. There's a couple kind of tests out there that are life or death.
Yes, there are.
I know what he's saying, but
they're typically not that your life is on the line, whether you,
but I get
how you perform, but it is based on life or death.
Yeah, he's meaning more academic type, or to get a job or something. So it's
yeah,
I just couldn't help myself.
And I just want to end once again. Check out the minute therapist. We'll have the link in the show notes. And I just opened up all the posts, and we have some show topics in here.
Oh,
right.
I love it when we stumble upon something new.
Yeah, like topics like feelings are facts, rebut the buts, an anxiety checklist, rethinking your anger.
Oh, I love it.
Wow.
Love it.
Yeah.
Putting the self back in self-esteem, thinking through anxiety. I'm like, oh boy, there's some shows in there.
Wow. Yeah, there are.
Sounds like some topics we've even touched on before. That's awesome.
Don't you love that? I love that.
That's awesome. Well, guys, what do you think? We good?
Yeah, that was fun.
Feeling good. All right. With that, everyone, if you want to continue the conversation with me, with us, with the show, all that good jazz, you can reach me at Twitter at Jen's Crazy Life. That's Jen with a G. You can also reach the show through our website at thecrazylifepodcast.weebly.com. You can reach us via email at thecrazylifepodcast@outlook.com. Reach out to us if you want to join us on the show. You have a topic you want us to talk about. You have something you would like to share. We would love to hear from you. So reach out. And Hanno, how can they reach you?
You can find me on Twitter at IdaHeno. You can find me on Facebook at Heno Heiter. You can send me a message there or get a hold of us through our Facebook page where Brian has all the info.
To facebook.com/group/Crazy Life Podcast. You can also find the show on Twitter at The Crazy Life Pod. You can find me on Twitter at Stunami. The other podcast I'm on can be found at salty_language or saltylanguage.com. And that show is not safe for work. I lost my place like I always do. We're part of the Tangent Bound Network, which can be found at tangentboundnetwork.com. So go give that a look, and you may find some other podcasts that you're interested in. And if you are using iTunes, we ask if you would please rate, review, and subscribe. That way it helps us move up in the rankings and the searches. If you're using another podcast app like Stitcher or others, please use the like or share buttons for the same reasons. And then, of course, remind you, we're not doctors, therapists, trained professionals of any kind. We're just three people sharing our opinions and feelings on topics. If something in here rings out to you and you feel like you could use some help, please seek professional help. Please don't self-diagnose, and go get the estimate, as I've said before, and get a course of attack with a doctor or therapist, whatever it is, and try to get yourself some help. Also, please don't see this show as a replacement for therapy. That's no good. I feel like there's something else in there and I don't remember. So, if you are in a position that you feel like you may harm yourself or others, please reach out to someone in your support system. Try not to be alone, and call 911 if you have to. Call suicide prevention hotline number, which again, there's information for those on our Facebook group, or obviously just Google suicide prevention hotline numbers. If you find yourself even planning or writing suicide notes, please seek help right then. That's that's a huge red flag, and please get yourself some help before it gets worse. And then the next to last thing I'm going to say this week is reach out to somebody. Tell them you love them, tell them you appreciate them, tell them that you're just grateful for them, or just reach out and say hi, see how they're doing. Because you never know, might make their day, might save their life. So, and the last thing I'm going to talk about was something I meant to mention earlier and I forgot, which was I was reading late last week, I think it was, that Facebook is changing something in their in their algorithm or something, to where, I mentioned a long time ago how you could report someone's post if you thought they may be suicidal or homicidal. Now Facebook is actually programming it so that it will look for certain trends or terms and basically flag them as potentially like self-harmful or
wow,
whatever. Yeah, and there's a whole privacy issue and some other things that we're not going to get into on this podcast, but that a lot of people are not happy about. But I love it for the fact that it may save some people's lives,
Mm-hmm.
And I like the fact that that's kind of their attitude about it, because someone asked them about being able to opt out of it. And they were like, no, because if you can opt out of it, that kind of defeats the purpose of it. So,
Yeah.
So yeah, good on Facebook for trying. I don't know about the other stuff. Like I said, there's some issues in there that may need to be resolved somehow or another, but on the surface, I really like this idea. I love that the social media sites are trying to do things to help people, so they don't commit suicide or harm others, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, we have to look out for each other as best we can. We can't change someone's life decisions. If they make a decision that they want to make, that's on them. But anything we can do to help them see things from a different perspective, is always good. So with that, folks, keep wiggling your toes, keep your breathing exercises, and use all the tools in your tool chest. And we will talk next week.